The guests held their breath as Victoria's sharp heels clicked against the marble floor, the sound of her arrival louder than any wedding vow ever could be. Before we dive into this story, I need to know, have you ever been caught in a situation where the truth came out at the worst possible moment? Drop your answer in the comments. I read every single one. And if you've ever had to face betrayal, hit that subscribe button. Trust me, you'll want to see how this unfolds. Now, let me take you back to where it all started. It was the kind of wedding that only happened once in a lifetime. Grand, lavish, and attended by every person who mattered in William's world. His towering mansion sat on the edge of a sprawling estate, its marble floors and crystal chandeliers glistening under the soft light. The air was thick with the sound of a string quartet and murmurs of excitement. It was the perfect setting for a perfect marriage, or so everyone thought. Jasmine stood in front of the mirror, adjusting her veil one last time, her reflection a blur of grace and strength. The dress was a delicate shade of white, hugging her figure just enough to make her feel like a queen. But today, she wasn't just a queen. She was the woman who had fought for this life. She had fought for her family, for her name, and for the man standing at the altar waiting for her. But beneath the surface, there was a quiet storm. Jasmine had known for months, maybe even years, that something was off. She wasn't blind. She wasn't naive. William, her charming, successful husband-to-be, had always been a little too attentive to his business trips, a little too distracted when they were together. But she loved him. She loved the life they built together, the reputation they had forged. It had been a fairy tale until it wasn't. She had discovered his affair months ago, but what could she do? Walk away? Leave the life she had worked so hard to build? No, she would stay, but only on her terms. Her phone buzzed in her pocket, pulling her out of her thoughts. It was a message from her best friend. "Mia? You good?" Jasmine smiled slightly, tapping a response. "I'm fine. Just waiting for the day to be over." She wasn't ready for the day to be over, though. She wasn't ready for what was about to happen. But Jasmine was good at pretending. She was good at playing the role of the perfect wife, the perfect woman, the perfect daughter-in-law. It had always been her strength until now. Outside, the ceremony had already begun. The guests were seated in their places, watching with eager eyes as William, tall and handsome in his perfectly tailored suit, stood at the altar. His eyes scanned the crowd, but he didn't see her yet. He was waiting for her, the woman he had promised to love, honor, and cherish. The door to the bridal suite opened, and Mia stepped inside, her face a mask of concern. "Jazz, you sure about this?" Jasmine's gaze flickered to her friend. She hadn't asked anyone for advice, not this time. She had made up her mind, and there was no turning back. "I'm fine," Jasmine said, her voice steady, though there was a quiet edge to it. "I'm doing this." Mia wasn't convinced, but she didn't push. Instead, she gave her a soft smile, the kind that was meant to comfort, but only seemed to underline the uncertainty in the air. "You know you don't have to," Mia whispered, but Jasmine just nodded. With one last breath, Jasmine stepped out of the room, walking down the grand hallway that led to the waiting crowd. Her heart was racing, but she didn't let it show. She had spent so many years building this life, this empire, with William. She wasn't about to let a little thing like betrayal stand in her way now. Not when everything was finally in place. Have you ever had to face something you knew would change everything? Hit that subscribe button if you've ever had to confront a truth you weren't ready to hear. Just as the vows were about to be spoken, the door swung open, and everything they had built together came crashing down. The ceremony hall was filled with the soft sound of music, the air thick with anticipation. Jasmine, standing just outside the door, felt a wave of calm wash over her. She had been preparing for this moment for weeks, months. Today, she would face everything head-on. But even as the music played and the guests waited in eager silence, Jasmine couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. She was halfway down the aisle when it happened. The large oak doors, usually reserved for the bridal party, burst open with a force that sent gasps through the crowd. A woman, tall and striking, stood there, her figure outlined by the light pouring in from the hallway. It was Victoria. Jasmine's heart skipped a beat as the woman, her husband's mistress, strolled down the aisle with a confident, almost defiant stride. Her face was calm, but there was an intensity in her eyes that made the entire room hold its breath. William's face turned pale as he caught sight of her, his hands stiff at his sides. He hadn't planned for this. Jasmine could see it in the way his eyes darted to the crowd, then back to Victoria. He was caught completely off guard. Victoria stopped at the end of the aisle, her gaze fixed on Jasmine. She didn't speak at first, but the weight of her presence filled the entire room. Every eye in the place was on her. And in that moment, Jasmine knew this wasn't just a mistake. This was a statement. "I'm sorry, I couldn't stay away," Victoria said, her voice steady but full of something sharp. "I need to tell the truth. This wedding shouldn't be happening." The gasps that followed were deafening. Jasmine's grip on her bouquet tightened, her fingers turning white. The guests shifted uncomfortably, but the moment stretched on, like time itself was holding its breath. William's eyes flickered to Jasmine, and then back to Victoria. "What are you doing here?" he asked, his voice barely a whisper, panic creeping into his words. "I'm here because I'm done hiding, William," Victoria continued, her voice rising with each word. "You promised me the world. You told me that I was the one. And now you're about to marry her, your wife. The woman you pretend is your only one." She turned to the guests, her gaze sweeping over the room. "But we all know the truth." Jasmine's heart pounded in her chest. The silence that followed was heavy. Her breath caught in her throat. The truth was finally out. Not only had William betrayed her, he had been lying to everyone in this room. He had been pretending, making promises to two women. And now the whole world knew. The priest, his voice faltering, tried to regain control of the situation, but the damage was done. Victoria had thrown the entire wedding into chaos. Every eye was on Jasmine now, waiting for her reaction. Jasmine stood motionless, her eyes never leaving Victoria. There was a quiet fury in her expression, a calmness that spoke louder than any words could. She had always been poised, graceful, the perfect picture of a wife who had it all. But now, something inside her was shifting. This wasn't just about William's betrayal anymore. It was about her reclaiming control. It was about standing up for herself, for everything she had fought for. William took a step forward, his voice filled with desperation. "Jasmine, please, I can explain. You have to understand. This is—" But Jasmine raised a hand, cutting him off. Her voice was quiet but firm, carrying a weight that none of them expected. "I don't need you to explain, William," she said, her words slow, deliberate. "What I need is for you to be honest. About everything." Victoria's smirk widened as she looked at Jasmine. She clearly thought she had the upper hand, but Jasmine wasn't about to give her that satisfaction. "Enough," Jasmine said, her eyes never leaving William's. "I've spent years living in your shadow, pretending to be a perfect wife. But I won't do it anymore. You don't get to humiliate me in front of everyone. Not now. Not ever again." She turned to the priest. "I want the rings," Jasmine said, her voice steady, but there was a fire in it now. "I'll take the deed too." There was a collective gasp from the guests. Jasmine's words struck the room like a thunderclap. As William's eyes widened in shock, Jasmine stepped forward, ignoring the chaos that surrounded her. She reached for the wedding rings, slowly taking them off of William's hands, one by one. Her movements were slow, measured. She didn't look at Victoria, didn't even acknowledge her presence. She wasn't interested in what Victoria had to say. This was about reclaiming her dignity, about walking away from a life built on lies. Have you ever had to face the truth you didn't want to see? Hit that subscribe button if you've ever had to make a decision that changed everything. Before we continue, I need to know, have you ever had to make a decision that felt like it would break you, but you knew it was the only way forward? Drop your answer in the comments. I read every single one. And if you've ever had to find your strength in the hardest moment, hit that subscribe button. Trust me, you won't want to miss what happens next. Let's go back to the moment Jasmine took back control. Jasmine's fingers shook as she placed the rings on the table, her heart pounding with every step she took. The clink of the rings against the hard surface was the only sound that filled the room. It was a simple gesture, but it felt monumental. She had just stripped William of everything: his pride, his marriage, his control. And as she looked at him, standing there frozen, she knew that this moment would change everything. The crowd was silent, the tension in the air so thick it felt suffocating. All eyes were on her, waiting for her to make the next move. No one knew what to expect, least of all William, who stood motionless in shock. "Jasmine, please." William's voice cracked as he finally spoke, his words desperate. "We can talk about this. We can fix this." But Jasmine didn't flinch. She didn't respond to his pleading. She had heard it all before, the promises, the excuses. But today she wasn't interested in words. She was interested in actions. And his actions had already spoken louder than anything he could ever say. Her gaze remained steady on him, her heart still heavy but resolute. "Fix it?" she repeated, her voice low, but steady. "How do you fix something like this, William? How do you fix a lifetime of lies?" Victoria, still standing at the front, watched the exchange with a mix of satisfaction and confusion. She didn't understand. She had thought this was her moment, her time to finally take what she believed was hers. But Jasmine wasn't fighting back the way she expected. There was no dramatic outburst, no confrontation. Instead, Jasmine was standing there, calm and composed, taking back control without a single tear, without a single plea. "Why don't you go ahead and tell them how it really is?" Jasmine finally said, her eyes flicking toward the guests who had been silently watching the whole scene unfold. "Tell them about your affair. Tell them how you've been lying to me, to everyone. Tell them how you planned to make me look like the fool today." William's face turned a shade of crimson, his mouth opening and closing as he searched for words. But nothing came out. Jasmine felt a quiet satisfaction in the silence. She wasn't here for revenge. She wasn't here to make a scene. She was here to reclaim what had always been hers: her dignity, her self-respect, and her life. Victoria stepped forward, breaking the silence. "You don't have to do this, Jasmine," she said, her voice dripping with false sympathy. "William and I—" "Stop." Jasmine's voice cut through the air, sharp and final. "I've heard enough from both of you." There was a moment of stillness. Jasmine looked between the two of them: William, who was too ashamed to even meet her eyes, and Victoria, who stood there with that same smug look on her face. For a brief moment, Jasmine wondered what it would feel like to tear it all down. Everything they had built, everything they thought they had taken from her. But instead of feeling anger or rage, she just felt calm. So much calmer than she had ever expected to feel in this moment. "This is over," she said simply, turning toward the door. "The marriage, the lies, the secrets, it all ends now." The guests were still frozen, unsure of what to do or say. But Jasmine didn't need their approval. She wasn't doing this for them. She was doing this for herself. William reached out, his hand shaking as he tried to grab her arm. "Jasmine, please," he pleaded again, his voice broken. "I love you. We can fix this. I swear." Jasmine stopped in her tracks, her back still to him. She didn't turn around. She didn't need to. She already knew everything she needed to know. "You don't love me, William," she said quietly. "You love the idea of me, but that's not the same." She pulled her arm away from his grasp and walked out the door, leaving the man who had broken her heart behind. Have you ever made a decision that left you standing alone in the silence? Drop your answer in the comments. I read every single one. And if you've ever had to walk away from everything you knew, hit that subscribe button. Trust me, you'll want to see how this unfolds. Let me take you back to the moment when everything changed for Jasmine. Jasmine's heels clicked sharply against the pavement as she stepped away from the mansion, the chaos of the wedding now a distant memory. The cool night air bit at her skin, but she barely noticed. Her mind was a blur of emotions. Anger, betrayal, and something deeper, something she hadn't allowed herself to feel before. Relief. She had done it. She had taken the rings, the deed, and walked out. But even now, with every step she took away from the life she had built with William, she felt a pang in her chest. What would her life look like now? Would she be able to rebuild the pieces of herself that she had given away so freely? Her phone buzzed in her pocket, and she pulled it out, the screen lighting up with an unknown number. It was probably someone from the wedding, still trying to make sense of the mess that had unfolded. But the name that flashed on the screen made her stop in her tracks. William. With a deep breath, she answered, her voice calm despite the whirlwind of emotions inside her. What do you want? There was a long pause on the other end, followed by his voice, hoarse and full of desperation. Jasmine, please, let's talk. I need to explain. Her grip tightened around the phone. She had no desire to talk to him. What could he possibly say that would change anything? She had already heard his excuses. He had already told her everything he thought she wanted to hear. But it had all been lies. I'm done, William, she said, her voice steady. I'm done listening to your lies. This conversation is over. She ended the call before he could respond, shoving the phone back into her bag. The weight of it all hit her suddenly, like a wave crashing over her. She had just walked away from a marriage, from the life she had worked so hard to build. But what did it mean? Was she making the right choice, or was she just running from the hurt? A soft voice interrupted her thoughts. Jazz? She turned to find Mia standing a few feet away, her face full of concern. What happened? Are you okay? Jasmine shook her head, swallowing the lump in her throat. I don't know if I'm okay, but I'm not going back. Mia took a step closer, her hand reaching out to gently grasp Jasmine's arm. You did what you had to do. You're strong, Jazz, but you don't have to do this alone. Jasmine nodded, grateful for her friend's support, but feeling the weight of the moment pressing down on her. I don't even know what's next. I don't know what I'm supposed to do. You take it one step at a time, Mia said quietly. You've spent so long putting everyone else first. Now it's your turn. You have the strength to do this. But as much as Jasmine wanted to believe those words, a part of her still felt lost. She had spent years building her life with William. She had invested so much into their future, into the idea of them. How could she let it all go? How could she leave the life she thought she wanted? The soft hum of a car engine interrupted her thoughts, and Jasmine looked up to see a black car pulling into the parking lot. Before she could register who it was, the door swung open, and there stood William. He didn't speak at first, but his eyes searched hers, filled with an emotion she couldn't quite place. His usual confidence was gone. He looked broken. Jasmine, he said softly, his voice strained. Please, just let me explain. I know I messed up, but I never wanted to hurt you. She didn't take a step forward, didn't even react to his words. She simply stood still, her heart pounding in her chest. She had spent so much time trying to make their marriage work. But now, she didn't know if she even recognized the man standing in front of her. I don't need an explanation, William, she said, her voice steady but heavy with finality. What I need is for you to accept that this is over. He took a step closer, his hand reaching out like he wanted to touch her, to pull her back. But Jasmine didn't move. She wasn't going to fall for it again. Please don't walk away, he pleaded. You're my life, Jazz. I can't lose you. The words hit her harder than she expected, but they also solidified her decision. She couldn't keep living in a world of broken promises, of false hope. The Jasmine who had stayed, who had tried to make it work, was gone. She had to be. I'm already gone, William, she whispered. You lost me the moment you decided to betray me. I can't keep waiting for someone who's never going to show up for me. With one last look, she turned and walked away, her heels clicking against the pavement as she left everything behind. The man, the house, the life. It was all gone. But as she walked toward the uncertain future, she knew one thing for sure. She was going to be okay. She wasn't just walking away from him. She was walking toward herself. Have you ever had to walk away from something that once meant everything to you? Hit that subscribe button if you've ever had to choose your own happiness over someone else's promises. The silence was unbearable, but it wasn't the kind of silence that needed to be filled. It was the kind of silence that made everything that had been unsaid loud and clear. Jasmine sat alone in her apartment, the soft hum of the city outside her window barely making a sound in the quiet that filled the room. It was the first time in what felt like forever that she was alone, and yet, the weight of the silence felt like a suffocating blanket. It had been days since the wedding, since she'd walked away from William. The weeks of tension, betrayal, and broken promises had all led to this moment. She thought walking away would feel like freedom, but instead, it felt like an empty void. She had the rings and the deed in her possession. They were symbols of everything that had been taken from her, everything she had lost. But now that they were hers, they didn't feel like victory. They felt like chains. She had fought for this life, for this love, and now it was all gone. A knock at the door startled her from her thoughts. She hadn't expected company, especially not after everything that had happened. When she opened it, Mia stood there, her expression filled with concern and something else, something unspoken. You haven't answered any of my calls, Mia said, stepping inside. I was worried about you. Jasmine didn't answer at first. She just moved away from the door, allowing Mia to enter. The apartment felt small, too quiet, and Mia's presence only made the silence feel louder. I've been thinking, Jasmine said finally, sitting down on the couch, about everything. Mia sat beside her, giving her a moment of quiet. You don't have to talk about it if you're not ready. But you're not alone in this, Jazz. Jasmine nodded, but the weight of the situation sat heavy on her chest. I thought I'd feel better after walking away. I thought the decision would be easy, but it's not. It's not like I thought it would be. Mia placed a hand gently on hers. I know. Leaving someone you loved, someone you trusted, it's not easy, but you did the right thing. Jasmine felt a tear slip down her cheek, but she wiped it away quickly, not wanting to appear weak. I feel like I lost everything. The life I built, the love I thought I had, everything's gone now. And I can't even figure out who I am without it. Mia squeezed her hand. You're more than just that life, Jasmine. You're more than just what he made you believe you were. This is your chance to rebuild. You get to decide who you are now. Jasmine didn't reply immediately. She wasn't sure what to say. All she had known for the past few years was William, their life together, their shared future. And now everything felt like a huge question mark. But just as the weight of it all seemed too much to bear, her phone buzzed on the coffee table. Her heart skipped when she saw the name on the screen. It was William. Her hand hovered over the phone, the familiar mix of anger and confusion creeping back into her chest. She had told him it was over, but here he was again, trying to pull her back in. Mia watched her, sensing the tension. You don't have to answer that. He doesn't get to keep pulling you back, Jazz. Jasmine knew Mia was right. She had made the decision. She had left him. She wasn't about to go back on it. But still, the pull of what they once had made it hard to ignore. She picked up the phone, staring at the screen for a moment before she hit ignore. The decision was final now. She couldn't keep holding on to the past. Not when it was so clear that it wasn't meant to be. The phone buzzed again, and Jasmine's resolve strengthened. She wasn't going to let him control her anymore. She wasn't going to let him pull her back into the life that had left her broken. "I can't keep letting him do this to me," Jasmine said softly, almost to herself. Mia gave her a soft smile, her eyes filled with quiet pride. "You're strong, Jasmine. You're finally doing what's right for you." But just as Jasmine was starting to feel the tiniest bit of relief, a sharp knock at the door interrupted the moment. Her heart raced again. Who could it be now? Jasmine slowly stood up, her stomach tight with unease. She walked to the door and opened it, but what she saw made her stomach drop. Standing on her doorstep, drenched from the rain, was none other than William. His eyes were red, his clothes wet and clinging to his frame. He looked nothing like the man who had walked away from her at the wedding. He looked broken, and maybe, just maybe, he was finally seeing what he had lost. "Jazz, please," he said, his voice raw. "I know I messed up. I know I hurt you, but I can't lose you." He stood there in the rain, looking like a man who had lost everything, and maybe, for the first time, he finally understood the weight of his actions. Jasmine stood frozen at the door, her breath catching in her throat as she looked at the man standing before her. William, drenched in the rain, his hair sticking to his forehead, his clothes clinging to his body. He looked nothing like the man she had once loved. Gone was the smooth talker, the confident businessman. In front of her stood a broken man, standing in the pouring rain, desperate. Her heart skipped a beat, and for a moment, she felt the familiar tug of their past. But only for a moment. She had made a decision. She had walked away. She couldn't let him back in now. Not after everything. "What are you doing here?" Jasmine's voice was steady, but there was an edge to it that made it clear she wasn't going to let him off easy. William's voice cracked. He swallowed hard, his hands trembling slightly as he wiped the rain from his face. "I couldn't just let you go, Jazz. Couldn't. I know I messed up. I know I hurt you, but I can't lose you." Jasmine felt a flicker of something inside her. A reminder of the person she once was, the woman who had loved him with everything she had. But she buried it deep. She couldn't let herself go back to that place. Not now. Not after everything he had put her through. "You already did," Jasmine said, her words cold but firm. "You lost me the moment you decided to lie to me, to betray me. You had your chance, William." The rain poured harder, but neither of them moved. William looked at her, his eyes filled with something raw, regret, guilt, maybe even desperation. He took a small step forward, but Jasmine didn't budge. "Please, Jazz," he pleaded, his voice softer now, almost breaking. "I didn't mean to hurt you. I thought I could handle it. I thought I could have both of you. But I see now that I've lost everything. Please, don't walk away." Jasmine's heart ached. She wanted to believe him. She wanted to believe that he had changed, that he wasn't the man who had destroyed their marriage. But every time she looked at him, all she saw was the betrayal. "You didn't just hurt me, William," she said, her voice shaking slightly. "You hurt us. You hurt everything we had. And now you're here, standing in the rain, acting like it's all on me to fix it. You don't get to make this my problem." William's eyes filled with pain. "I know," he said quietly. "I know I've ruined everything. But I love you, Jasmine. I've always loved you. I was lost." Jasmine took a deep breath, the weight of his words pressing on her chest. She had loved him, too. She had believed in him, believed in their future together. But she couldn't let him back in. She couldn't keep sacrificing herself for someone who was willing to hurt her again. "I loved you too," she said softly. "But I can't keep doing this. I can't keep living in the past, pretending it didn't happen. It's over." The finality of her words hit them both, and for the first time, Jasmine didn't feel like she was breaking. She felt like she was finally standing on her own, free from the chains of her past. William didn't say anything for a long time. He just stood there, his eyes locked on hers. His lips parted, but the words didn't come. And for the first time in a long time, Jasmine didn't need him to say anything. She had heard enough. She had made her choice. "I'm sorry, Jasmine," William finally whispered, his voice barely audible over the rain. But it wasn't enough. It would never be enough. She took a step back, her heart heavy but resolute. "Goodbye, William." And with that, she closed the door, the sound echoing in the silence that followed. Outside, the rain continued to pour, but inside, Jasmine felt something shift. Something new, something she hadn't felt in years. She wasn't angry. She wasn't sad. She was free. The house looked the same, just as grand, just as polished. The same grand staircase, the same gleaming marble floors. But for Jasmine, everything had changed. She stepped inside, her heels clicking sharply against the floor, but the sound felt wrong, distant, as if it didn't belong to her anymore. Her heart ached. This was her home once, where she and William had built a life together, where they had dreamed of a future. But now it felt foreign, cold, empty. She hadn't meant to come back here. After walking away from the wedding, she had driven to Mia's house, trying to make sense of everything. But when she got the call, William wanted to meet her, wanted to talk. Something inside of her cracked. It wasn't forgiveness she was looking for. It wasn't a second chance for him. It was for herself. She needed to know if she had truly walked away from the right life. She needed to know if leaving him was really the best thing. William had begged her to come back, to talk. So here she was, standing in the place that had once felt like home but now felt like a prison. She walked through the familiar rooms, each one carrying the weight of memories. Some good, some painful. It was hard not to remember the laughter, the quiet evenings they had spent together before everything fell apart. But now, all she could see were the lies, the betrayal, the missed chances to truly be honest with each other. The door to the study was slightly ajar. It was the one room she hadn't entered since the day she'd packed her things. She hesitated for a moment, but something pulled her inside. And there he was. William stood by the desk, staring at a set of papers spread out in front of him, his back to her. The room was heavy with tension, the silence thick enough to suffocate. "Jasmine," he said, his voice barely a whisper. He didn't turn around. He didn't need to. She knew he had been waiting for her. She stepped forward, but her heart felt like it was slowing. She wasn't sure what she expected to feel. Anger, frustration, maybe even regret. But what she felt was nothing. The man standing before her was a stranger. The man she had once loved was now just a man who had made a choice, and that choice had led them both to this place. "I don't know why I'm here," she said softly, her voice filled with quiet resolution. "I thought I needed answers. I thought I needed closure. But now I see. I don't need anything from you. I've already walked away." William turned around slowly, his face etched with pain and guilt. His eyes, once filled with confidence, now seemed tired, worn down by the consequences of his actions. "I don't want to lose you," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "I know I made a mistake, Jazz, but I can't just let go of everything we had. We were good together. You were my world." Jasmine took a deep breath, trying to steady herself. She had to admit, hearing him say those words, feeling the weight of the truth in his voice, it hurt. But it wasn't enough. It wasn't enough to undo the damage he had caused. "You can't just undo it, William," she said quietly, the words coming from a place of strength she hadn't known she had. "You can't just pretend it didn't happen. You can't just erase the hurt. And you can't make me stay." William's eyes searched hers, a silent plea in them. But Jasmine knew. She knew that this was the end. There was no going back to what they had. There was no going back to the woman she used to be. "I don't need your love anymore," she whispered, her voice steady. I need to love myself. I need to find peace. And I can't do that if I keep looking for it in you. The room was silent for a moment, the weight of her words hanging in the air. And then, without another word, Jasmine turned and walked out. This time she didn't hesitate. She didn't look back. The door clicked shut behind her, the sound final. As she stepped out into the cool night air, a strange sense of peace settled over her. It wasn't the peace she had been searching for in him. It was the peace of knowing she was finally free. Free from the past. Free from the man who had once held her heart. She had chosen herself. And in that moment, she knew that no matter what happened next, she would be okay. Jasmine's hands were steady now, the nerves that had once gripped her fading away. She stood in front of her new apartment, the keys to her new life heavy in her pocket. The apartment wasn't grand or luxurious. It was small, cozy, but it was hers. Her own space, her own future, a place where she could breathe again. The city outside was bustling, full of noise and life. But in the quiet of her new home, Jasmine felt a sense of peace she hadn't known in a long time. She had stepped away from everything. Her past, her marriage, the man who had once been the center of her world. But what she had found in return was herself. The person she had buried for so long beneath the weight of expectations, love, and betrayal. As she unpacked the last of her boxes, Jasmine found a small photograph tucked away at the bottom of one. It was an old picture. One of her and William, smiling, laughing, before the world had come crashing down around them. It was a reminder of a time when she thought love was enough. But now, looking at the photo, she didn't feel sadness. She didn't feel regret. She simply felt gratitude. Gratitude for the strength it took to walk away. Gratitude for the lessons learned. And most of all, gratitude for the future she was starting to build for herself. The phone rang, and for a second, Jasmine hesitated. She had turned off the notifications from William's number weeks ago. He hadn't stopped calling, hadn't stopped sending messages, but she couldn't afford to let him back in. Not now. Not after everything he had put her through. But the number on the screen wasn't William's. It was Mia's. "Hey," Jasmine said, her voice calm but tired. "What's up?" "I was just checking in," Mia said, her tone warm and supportive. "How are you holding up?" Jasmine smiled, leaning back against the wall as she took a deep breath. "I'm good. I'm really good, Mia. I think I'm finally starting to feel like myself again." Mia's voice softened, filled with understanding. "I'm so proud of you, Jasmine. I know it hasn't been easy, but you've done it. You've rebuilt yourself." Jasmine paused, the weight of Mia's words sinking in. It hadn't been easy. She had been through so much pain, heartbreak, fear, but none of it had broken her. It had shaped her into someone stronger, someone wiser. "I didn't think I could do it," Jasmine said, her voice quiet, but filled with clarity. "But I did. I'm finally choosing myself. And I don't feel guilty about it anymore." Mia was quiet for a moment, letting the words settle. "You shouldn't," she said finally. "You deserve happiness, Jasmine. You deserve peace. You've been through enough." As Jasmine looked around her new apartment, she realized Mia was right. This was her peace. This was the life she was building. Not one that was defined by betrayal or lies, but one that was all hers. "I don't know what comes next," Jasmine said softly, her eyes searching the space around her. "But I know it's going to be mine. All mine." And for the first time in a long time, Jasmine truly believed it. Have you ever found the courage to choose yourself over everything else? Hit that subscribe button if you've ever had to rebuild your life after everything fell apart. Jasmine stood at the edge of a new chapter, the pages of her past behind her, but the future still unwritten. And for the first time, she wasn't afraid to turn the page. The sun was setting, casting a golden hue over the city. Jasmine stood by the window of her new apartment, looking out at the skyline. The world seemed so big now, but in a way it felt more like hers than it ever had before. She hadn't expected to feel this way, peaceful, calm, like she finally belonged in her own skin again. The last few months had been a whirlwind. There had been pain, there had been heartbreak, and there had been so many moments where she wasn't sure if she was doing the right thing. But now, standing here, looking at the world through a different lens, Jasmine knew she had made the right choice. It had been hard. Walking away from William, leaving behind the life she had worked so hard to build. But in doing so, she had found herself. She had found a version of herself that didn't need anyone else's approval, that didn't need anyone else to define her worth. As she looked around the apartment, she saw all the little changes she had made: new furniture, fresh flowers on the kitchen counter, and the small touches that made it her home. It wasn't much, but it was hers, and that was enough. Her phone buzzed on the counter, pulling her out of her thoughts. She glanced at the screen. It was a message from Mia. "I'm so proud of you. I hope you're smiling. You deserve it." Jasmine smiled to herself, the words sinking in. It was true. She deserved this. She deserved happiness, peace, and a life that was all her own. The sound of the doorbell interrupted her thoughts, and she hesitated for a moment. It was late, and she wasn't expecting anyone. But when she opened the door, she saw an unexpected face. It was William. He stood there, soaked from the rain, his eyes filled with something deeper than just regret. Something softer, something almost hopeful. "I know I don't deserve this," he said quietly, his voice hoarse. "But I wanted to say, thank you for everything. I hope you find the happiness you've been searching for." Jasmine stared at him for a long moment, the weight of their past heavy in the air between them. He had come here for closure, for forgiveness, but what she realized in that moment was that she didn't need it. She didn't need his apology, and she didn't need him to make peace with what had happened. She had already made peace with it herself. "You don't need to apologize, William," she said, her voice steady. "I'm not angry anymore, but I've already walked away, and I'm not looking back." William's eyes flickered with something. Maybe disappointment, maybe understanding, but he nodded slowly. "I get it, Jasmine. I do. I just wanted you to know that I'm sorry for everything." Jasmine didn't respond. She didn't need to. Her silence said everything she couldn't put into words. She had already forgiven him in her heart. But forgiveness didn't mean going back. Forgiveness meant moving forward. "I wish you the best, William," she said softly. "But I can't be a part of your life anymore." With that, she closed the door, not in anger, but in quiet acceptance. She had said everything she needed to say. She had found her peace, and now she was ready to move on. She stepped away from the door and looked out the window again. The city was still bustling, still full of noise and movement. But in that moment, Jasmine didn't feel lost in the chaos. She felt at home, grounded in a way she hadn't known she could be. She had found her own happiness, and for the first time in a long time, she didn't need anyone else to define it. Have you ever had to let go of someone to find your own peace? Hit that subscribe button if you've ever walked away from the past and stepped into your future. Thank you for watching this story to the end. If you enjoyed this story, you will surely love the next one. It's as crazier and more intriguing as you can ever imagine. So do check it out. Click on the image showing on your screen right now to watch the next one.